Hello everybody, welcome to a MediaTek Labs webinar. My name is Ed Kay, I'll be your host today, and this week's subject is IoT security. What opportunities and challenges are there for everyone? For those of you who've been with us before, this is the third in our webinar series, and we're really looking at all the different aspects that can help people from going through their idea through to prototyping and onto a mass-produced product. The labs team is really aimed to accelerate and support the path from idea to product, and this webinar series will really focus on deep diving into different aspects of the design and development phase. As I said, this week's webinar is focused on IoT security. As a quick background, MediaTek is not a well-known name in some parts of the world, but the technology is all around us in many household devices. Many of you who've got smart TVs, for instance, or DVD or Blu-ray players will have MediaTek technology within them. We're in smartphones, tablets, game stations and wearable devices, and we have market-leading positions in many parts of the world in many categories, particularly in smart TVs, DVD players, optical disk drives, that sort of thing. Why is this important? Effectively, what this really means is that we have a background of enabling more than 1 billion devices a year. So that's why it's an important piece of information for you guys to be aware of. We do have a background of enabling many, many devices to come to market. And who's MediaTek Labs? Well, MediaTek Labs is the ecosystem part of MediaTek. We're a global program. We're available in many parts of the world. We're free to join, which is great. It's a one-stop solution, really. It's really designed to help developers select the right hardware, build devices, build apps to support those devices, get access to services, and really kind of also engage with peer-to-peer community, and also with a number of internal MediaTek experts who can help you with any hardware questions you have. As part of the MediaTek Labs portfolio, we have a number of hardware development platforms as well as SDKs to support those. And these are really focused on both wearable and IoT solutions. The most common one of the original LinkIt boards was the LinkIt 1, which is a number of connectivity solutions all on a single board from day one. You don't need to buy any additional shields to get it to work. It has GPS, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. The GPS, for instance, also has GLONASS and Beidou support. It also has GPRS and an SD card as well. So it's really a great board. Allows the DIY and the maker communities to really kind of take advantage of their Arduino experience and step up to the next level. The LinkIt Smart 7688 is more of an open source Wi-Fi platform. It's really for professional developers who've got experience with OpenWRT, Python, node.js, things like that, and really kind of focuses more on Wi-Fi as a solution. The LinkIt Connect 7681 is probably the simplest product that we have at the moment. It's really a good way to enable a switch to have Wi-Fi connectivity, so you can kind of enable kind of many of your household appliances with a quite easy use of this board. We do have a new member of the family, which is the MediaTek LinkIt development platform for RTOS. The first HDK in this platform is based on the 7687 board. So it's the LinkIt 7687 by SAC. It's low power but highly connected. It's got a common tool chain. So it's an ARM Cortex M4. But what's interesting, and certainly interesting in the context of this webinar today, is that it also contains some comprehensive security solutions. So we've got an AES and a 3DES security engine. And also there's some compatibility with Arduino Uno as well. So MediaTek Labs kind of mantra is really to enable your success. It's really to help you to accelerate from going through your idea to prototyping and onto a product. There are a number of solutions that we provide to enable this to happen. On screen we have a list of things like developer resources, insights, inspiration, access to hardware, SDKs, technical support, advice, design and production help. These are all free to access for members, and it's free to join. So definitely good to go to the labs.mediatek.com. Where does MediaTek see itself in the IoT value chain? Well, as we can see, there are a number of different aspects to the value chain. There's the actual things themselves, there's the networking part of the value chain, there are communication services, analyzing the big data, applications and services. We talked in the past, in the previous webinar, in fact, about big data and the value of big data. MediaTek doesn't fall into those categories, but what it really focuses on is creating the things and the networking solutions. So we have simple applications, RTOS support, with rich applications. We have Linux and Android support, and also we have a really wide range of connected solutions, as I mentioned, certainly regarding things like the LinkIt One board. Where's this all going to lead? Well, at MediaTek we look at a number of different verticals. We have 6 verticals that we refer to commonly: wearables, smart home, connected car, healthcare, smart cities and smart industry. And in each of those verticals you can see there are a number of solutions that fall into this, and the list that we have at the moment is not the full list. It's just a cross-section of what's common at the moment. So you can imagine that each one of these verticals is going to generate many, many times the number of solutions. And of course, with each solution, we're going to end up with a number of sensors supplying data. So the amount of data that we're going to be generating is rapidly going to accelerate. So it's going to be all pervasive, big data absolutely everywhere from all the sensors that you can think of, and many more that haven't been kind of exploited at the moment. And how big is the market that we're talking about? Well, many people will talk in kind of multiple tens of billions of units by 2020, 2025, and some are a little bit more pessimistic. All we know is it's going to be a large number. What I've done is I've got a slide here that demonstrates the variance between the low end and the high end estimates. And as you can see, even the low end estimates, they're talking about well over a billion units for even something like smart factory solutions. So we're talking about a range between, I guess, 3.9 and $11 trillion in terms of the kind of size of the market by 2025. So as you can see, you know, when we start talking in trillions of dollars, the market's going to be big. So it doesn't matter to argue the detail over it. We know that it's going to be somewhere within those two estimates. But it's not all sweetness and light for IoT. There are some challenges still to be resolved. 3 of the biggest ones that we've highlighted in MediaTek are interoperability. Really, there's a lot of competing standards that try and coexist. There needs to be more work on integrating those to keep them coexisting and actually working much more in conjunction with each other. Devices capable of supporting multiple standards. So I know that there are some companies, but actually what their strategy is to build solutions that can support every standard that comes out. And clearly, long term, that's not a really kind of reliable business model. So what we're hoping to do is work on devices that are capable of multiple standards, but not necessarily every standard. Business models, there's still some work to be done to define how the best way that we can extract profit from IoT solutions. And then, of course, there's building an ecosystem that hastens that cooperation. So it's a lot of work to be done around how this can effectively produce a return on investment. I guess the one that's of interest mostly for today's webinar is security. There are lots of companies, software and hardware, that collaborate on security standards. And, we have new security systems, biometric systems, and things like that, that come online as well. So security is a big challenge at the moment, and that's what we'll focus on today. And as you can see, I've just highlighted a number of vulnerabilities that IoT can come under. There's control, where people will either try and control things like turn your lights on and off, or your locks on and off, for instance, or even hack people's embedded devices into their bodies. There's theft. People want to steal things. Equally, unlocking your door so that thieves can get in, or stealing online data, things like that. So there's that vulnerability. And then there's the people who just want to disrupt things for the sake of disrupting. Maybe turning your fridge off at night so that when you wake up in the morning, all your food's gone off, or something as trivial as that. Hacked cars just because they can. And yeah, as I mentioned, sometimes some body kind of sensors like pacemakers, they've been known to be hackable as well. And even this week, there was a report about certain hybrid cars in the UK that are able to be unlocked through some of these vulnerabilities. Just to keep on the automotive front, this is a slide from Harman International, which really does illustrate the number of attack vectors that are available to a standard car at the moment. Anything that's got sort of a heads-up display or a sat-nav system. There's a number of different systems that can either extract data or can inject kind of compromised data into the vehicle for various means, whether it's just mischief or whether it's stealing or influencing things. And of course, the car, it has access to private data as well. So it's potentially kind of a source of difficulty, and we need to be aware of the vulnerabilities that are focused on each vehicle. There's been some research on this, and in general, a lot of the IoT solutions, we find that, say, 90% of devices collect at least one part of personal information, whether that's your location or your name or something like that. But over 90% of devices collect at least one. 70% of devices transmit data over an unencrypted network service. So you can see that's an instant kind of vulnerability as well. And 25, the number of security vulnerabilities per device. This is an average that has been researched by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. So quite worrying figures. And does enterprise really recognize the risks? Well, the numbers that I have here from Atomic Research would argue not necessarily. If I look across the numbers, 40% of retail executives are not at all concerned with IoT security risks. So, on the face of it, it appears that many companies, although they seem to be aware that there are risks, they're not concerned with those risks. And actually, some of this is down to the fact they don't actually believe they're capturing data that would be of use to a hacker. However, a different research paper by the Eclipse Foundation and the IEEE, which interestingly didn't target executives, it actually targeted developers themselves. That highlighted that security was the #1 concern in developing IoT solutions. Interoperability, interestingly, #2. So two of the things that we'd actually originally identified as challenges for IoT in general. So it's clear that developers understand the risks. And I think what we need to be careful of is that we manage the tension between the developers' concerns as the guys on the ground who are implementing solutions and the commercial requirements for the business. If the executives don't think there's a problem, but the developers do, then there's possible tension going to form there. So it's worth keeping those things in mind. And obviously Dilbert always has something to say on things like this. Yeah, security is a challenge, and developers are hopefully identifying it, and hopefully many of you who are developing solutions now are keeping it high on your list of requirements. So as I said, I mean, the challenge is that by prioritizing security, you're coming into conflict with your more commercial aspects of your business. So this creates device creation pressures, where there's the challenge to prioritize ease of use and time to market over privacy protection, security, those sort of things. And what I've done there is I've just created a diagram that shows you the security vulnerabilities at the heart of everything, and then the pressures from cost constraints, operational constraints, delivery limitations, customer behavior, and expertise all pressurize the amount of effort and activity you need to do to make your product secure. OWASP have identified the top 10 vulnerabilities in IoT, and I've listed them here. Insecure web interface, insufficient authentication, insecure web network services, lack of transport encryption, privacy concerns, insecure cloud interface, insecure mobile interface, insufficient security configurability, insecure software or firmware, and poor physical security. The last one is a really interesting one because many of you may have thought about how you're going to implement your security, but the bottom one, it refers to the actual physical device itself. If you're building a unit, enclosed in a case or whatever, is it secure from physical tampering? So it's something that kind of falls out of the natural thinking when you're building an IoT solution. Is it physically secure as well as software and hardware secure? And what I've also included on this slide is some of the attacker profiles, whether it's a recreational attacker and a criminal, and maybe they're looking at kind of just can they disrupt, for the sake of it. Maybe there's some vulnerabilities where they want to steal things as well. You've got the hacktivists who start to move up, have vast networks and do targeted attacks, and you get denial of service attacks, that sort of things. And then you're moving into organised crime and state-sponsored, where it's very much more scaling up the activity of the hackers themselves. And what are the consequences for you? Well, there are a number of costs associated with security risks. Your customers will lose privacy. Cybercrime may increase. Private data can start to be taken as well. And as IoT expands, this is going to really extend into not just kind of bank and credit card information, but it's going to extend to things like where is somebody at any time, their location, can you track them where they're moving about to, do they have any health issues that you've become aware of, and all this is actually going to lead to undermining the confidence in your product and then consequently your business as well. So the bottom line is that this can actually affect your business by losing customers and then giving you a poor view on the world going forward, so that your customers don't want to come back anymore. There are compromised internet-enabled devices as well that can then start sending spoof data, harvesting credentials, and again, as I mentioned before, denial of service attacks. The M2M activities often don't have any human involvement at all. And so sometimes the only time you know something's gone wrong is it's too late. That data has already been leaked out. So so it's worth in your solution, in maybe even including in a process, some ability to add some human oversight or human engagement at some point, just to make sure that every so often that you're not pumping out private data to unknown parties. So there are some basic steps. Look at default user accounts and manage user privileges appropriately. Don't use insecure protocols. So use things like keys, TLS or SSL. Be careful of undetected file changes. So if you monitor the file integrity of your system, it can start to reveal where the changes are taking place and potentially correct them at the same time. Look at other existing vulnerabilities. So things like patches and updates, make sure that everything is up to date, patched correctly. And then finally, there's things like legacy network points. So remove any unnecessary services that you may have from legacy solutions in the past. And also there's things to consider. There's quite a lot of things on this list. Things like secure boot. So you can use that using cryptographically signed code from the manufacturer. Secure code updates. Data security, so prevent unauthorized access to the device. Authentication. Communication to the device should be authenticated using strong passwords. It's not very complicated. Or using an authentication protocol such as X.509. Use secure communication protocols, and also don't use insecure encryption algorithms. So, for instance, 40-bit encryption used to be considered state of the art, but it's not considered secure anymore. Protection against cyber attacks, so embed firewalls, that sort of thing. You kind of do need to have an essential layer of defense to protect against common attacks, such as, I don't know, packet flood attacks or buffer flow overflow attacks. Intrusion detection and security monitoring. So existing embedded devices can be attacked and no one would ever know. So you need to kind of make sure that you're detecting these things, you're monitoring things that are going on. And some of the monitoring requirements may be different in enterprise requirements than they are from other solutions. Embedded security management, integration with security management systems sometimes can allow policies to be updated, which will mitigate against known threats. And final one there is device tampering detection. So if your device is in a plastic case, for instance, you might put special seals on it so that if it's broken, you know someone's been inside tampering with the device. So simple things like that. A few security snippets that are in our radar recently. So the US Department of Transport are recommending PKI for DSRC security. The current assumption for IoT security in 3GPP is that they're going to reuse EPS AKA procedure, but add some enhancements to improve signaling proficiency. The difficulty is that doesn't really scale up to very large IoT networks. One of the solutions is that hardware manufacturers are also adding in security features. As I mentioned earlier on, the LinkIt 7687 contains the AES and 3DES security engines. So, you know, MediaTek is supplying hardware built into the security built into that hardware, just as an added thing. That doesn't mean we've solved it for you, but it's one extra layer of security that you can add. Another good area to have a look at, the GSMA on their website provides guidance on IoT security issues. What's good about their documentation is that they've actually identified several use cases which are very transportable to other solutions as well. They've picked on e-health, drones, connected cars, those sort of things. So you can really have a look at how they've looked at those use cases and then move that on to your own solution. They've also got a really interesting privacy and security decision tree on their website as well. So you can kind of literally go through this list saying, What data do I need to collect? Is it personal? And is it regulated in law? Now that's an interesting question because it brings into the question all the issues about regional laws. Obviously in the EU at the moment we're all using similar kind of European Union data legislation. But when you move away from the EU, for instance, into Asia, the US, Africa, Australia, those sort of places, things start to change. So you really need to be aware of what's going on. And there are several companies that can help you with that sort of legislation and compliance. So what are our conclusions? Well, I think the first one is really assume that the security risks exist. Don't be in denial. Don't assume you're collecting nothing of value to a hacker. Sometimes the reason people hack is just because they can. So there may not be something to steal, but equally they may want to spoof malicious data into your system as well, and just cause general disruption. So don't be in denial. Everybody's system is at risk. Your solutions, when you put them in place, are really only as strong as the weakest link in your system, and that applies to both hardware and software. You know, your hardware, you can have security engines and things like that baked into your hardware. The hardware itself also should be secure and securely sealed, and also obviously you've got security concerns in the software and the communication protocols as well. Consider security as an essential feature of your solution. Really, when you're starting to put your requirements together, one of your requirements should be security, and you need to make it as appropriately high as you can. Consider it to be a great differentiator, because not everyone will consider this to be an essential feature. So when you're competing with the myriad of other IoT solutions in the future, having solid security and taking security and privacy data seriously is a great differentiator and a great thing to market on as well. And this also, as we mentioned, consider the security to be both physical and cyber as part of your feature list. Try not to, this sounds easier than it is, but try not to compromise against time to market. It's better that you spend a bit longer getting your security nailed down and working than rolling out a product too early with full of security holes. The consequences of breaches could potentially be more critical than an earlier rollout, and could, for some companies it can actually cost them the business. And consult with experts. There are lots of standard bodies. I pointed to some documentation on the GSMA website, for instance. There's many companies that are experts in security and can provide free or low-cost advice on whatever activity you're doing. And also MediaTek Labs portal. We have quite a vibrant forum where peer-to-peer conversations take place. There's conversations about security all the time, and also MediaTek themselves, we take part in those, and so we can provide access and information as well. And what are the next steps? First one, I would highly recommend everyone registers at labs.mediatek.com. It's free. You can download the SDKs and other documentation. Again, it's all free. We're going to have another webinar in June the 23rd. This one is going to focus on power management, which for certain solutions is a really critical factor. Again, you can register at MediaTek Labs to get access to that. All the content that we're providing for both this webinar and any other webinars and videos are available on YouTube and SlideShare. And if you've got any questions, either from today's webinar or from any of the other webinars, or in fact in general about IoT, labs.mediatek.com/contact us. Thanks for listening. Hope to hear you again soon. Bye.